Did you know that right now, as you're watching this video, millions of ants are working beneath your feet? Deep underground, hidden from the world above, entire cities are alive with activity. Workers rush through tunnels, soldiers patrol the borders, food is transported through underground highways, and somewhere in the darkness, a queen sits at the center of it all. Most people never see this hidden world, but tonight we're going inside. So what actually happens inside an ant colony? The first thing that might surprise you is its size. Most people imagine an ant colony as a few tunnels underground, but the reality is much more impressive. Some colonies contain hundreds of thousands of ants, others contain millions, and every one of those ants has a job. If we could peel away the dirt and look beneath the surface, we'd discover a massive underground city. A city filled with roads, storage rooms, nurseries, ventilation systems, and living spaces. Everything is organized, everything has a purpose. And somehow, despite having no maps, no signs, and no leaders directing traffic, the colony operates with incredible efficiency. The main tunnels act like highways. Workers move back and forth carrying food, dirt, eggs, and supplies. Some tunnels lead to food storage chambers. Others lead to nurseries where young ants are raised. And the deeper you go, the more important the chambers become. Most of the ants you'll find are workers. Worker ants are responsible for almost everything that happens inside the colony. They build tunnels, repair damage, clean the nest, feed other ants, care for babies, and gather food from the outside world. Without workers, the entire colony would collapse within days. What's even more surprising is that some worker ants spend their entire lives underground and never see sunlight once. One of the busiest areas in the colony is the nursery. This is where eggs, larvae, and young ants are raised. Thousands of future ants may be packed into a single chamber. Workers constantly care for them, cleaning them, feeding them, protecting them, and even moving them from room to room. Why? Because temperature is extremely important. If one chamber becomes too warm, workers move the babies. If another chamber becomes too cold, they move them again. It's almost like a giant daycare operating 24 hours a day. And then there's the queen. Deep inside the colony, protected by layers of workers and soldiers, sits the most important ant in the entire city, the queen. Her job is simple: lay eggs, and lots of them. Some queens can produce thousands of eggs every single day. Over time, those eggs become workers, soldiers, and future queens. Without the queen, the colony slowly dies. With her, it can continue growing for years. Some queens have even been known to live for decades, making them some of the longest living insects on Earth. But here's something even stranger. Ants don't talk. They don't have conversations. Yet somehow they communicate with thousands of other ants every day. So, how do they do it? The answer is chemicals. Ants release chemical signals called pheromones. Different pheromones mean different things. Some warn of danger, some lead to food, others help ants recognize members of their own colony. Imagine an invisible language floating through the air. That's how ants communicate. Every second of every day, millions of messages are being sent throughout the colony. Now let's talk about food, because no city can survive without it. Every day, worker ants leave the safety of the nest and head into the outside world. These ants are known as foragers, and for an ant, the outside world is enormous. A blade of grass becomes a tree, a crack in the sidewalk becomes a canyon, a puddle becomes a lake, and every journey comes with danger. Birds, spiders, beetles, lizards. Death can come from almost anywhere. Yet the workers continue searching, looking for seeds, leaves, fruit, dead insects, or even crumbs dropped by humans. Then something amazing happens. One worker discovers food. Maybe it's a potato chip, maybe it's a cookie crumb, maybe it's a dead insect. Instead of keeping the discovery to itself, the ant leaves behind a pheromone trail on its way back to the colony. Other ants detect the trail and begin following it. Then more ants arrive, then even more. Before long, hundreds of ants may be traveling along the same route. What looks random to us is actually a highly organized transportation system. It's one of the reasons ant colonies are so successful. But some ants take things even further. Certain species don't just gather food, they farm it. Leafcutter ants spend their days cutting pieces of leaves and carrying them underground. But here's the strange part. They don't actually eat the leaves. Instead, they use them to grow fungus. The fungus becomes food for the colony. In other words, ants were farming millions of years before humans planted their first crops. And every city has another problem to deal with: waste. What happens when an ant dies? Worker ants remove the body from the colony. The dead are carried to special waste areas or dumped outside the nest. This helps prevent disease from spreading. Some colonies even create what scientists call ant graveyards, places where thousands of dead ants eventually accumulate. It's a surprisingly organized system for such tiny creatures. But life inside an ant colony isn't always peaceful. One of the biggest threats comes from rival colonies. That's right, ants go to war. When two colonies compete for territory or food, massive battles can break out. Thousands of ants may fight at the same time. Entire armies clash beneath our feet every single day. Soldiers rush toward the enemy, workers retreat to safety, and chemical alarm signals spread throughout the colony. Most people never notice these tiny wars happening beneath them. Yet they can determine the fate of an entire colony. And rival ants aren't the only danger. Rain can be even worse. For humans, a rainstorm is usually an inconvenience. For ants, it can be a disaster. Heavy rain can flood tunnels and destroy chambers. Workers immediately spring into action. Eggs are carried to higher ground. Larvae are moved to safety. Damaged tunnels are repaired. Every ant works together to save the colony, and somehow, more often than not, they survive, which is impressive considering how long ants have been around. Scientists believe ants have existed for more than 100 million years. They lived alongside dinosaurs. They survived mass extinctions. And today, there are an estimated 20 quadrillion ants on Earth. That's a number so large it's difficult to imagine. For every human alive today, there are millions of ants. Some supercolonies even stretch for hundreds of miles and contain billions of ants, making them some of the largest cooperative societies ever discovered on Earth. So the next time you see a single ant crawling across the ground, remember, you're not looking at just one insect. You're looking at a member of a hidden civilization. A civilization with workers, soldiers, nurseries, highways, food storage rooms, farmers, and a queen at its center. A civilization that has been operating beneath our feet for millions of years. Most people never notice it, but now you know it's there.